Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while, and when I mean a while, it's been like a month as a while. Things have been crazy. The last vlog, of course, was my delivery video that I posted, but I'm gonna do more about my C-section delivery in this video here. First off, here's the baby. Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. He's sleepy. So I haven't been posting much, if at all, this entire last 10 months because life has just been crazy. This last month, learning how to be a parent to 2 kids has been rough. Trying to figure out how to work with a toddler, or I should say a 4-year-old, he's more of a preschooler now, how to work with a 4-year-old who's not the center of attention anymore, and how to deal with a baby who takes up so much time, and especially a baby who has horrible acid reflux that throws up all the time, and having to deal with sleep schedules and all that stuff. It's just been, there hasn't been much time to actually sit down and do a vlog. So I'm sitting down now to do it. I actually have time, and I actually got dressed today, and my hair, it looks horrible, and I've got a little bit of makeup on. So I'm like, okay, today we're gonna do it, because I wanted to talk to you about how everything went, just how my pregnancy went, because I'm not 100% sure if every vlog I put up kind of told an accurate story. It was just more of, hey, this is what I'm doing now, this is what I'm doing at this moment, this is what I'm gonna do tomorrow, and there we go. So it's just kind of, I don't know how concise it was, so right now I'm gonna talk about it. So I got pregnant, and of course I got hit with horrible morning sickness, so my desire to do any sort of vlog went down. I just didn't feel good, all that first trimester fun stuff. You know how that goes. Second trimester came, heartburn started. Gotta love that heartburn, which is funny because when I was pregnant with Harrison, I actually didn't have heartburn until like the last 2 months I was pregnant with him. With Levi, it started right off the bat. So that wasn't very fun. And then I had my anatomy scan at 20 weeks, nothing came up with him, no health abnormalities that we know of yet. Hopefully he's perfectly fine. I don't want to go through another surgery or anything like that like we did with Harrison, so that was not fun. But then things started to change about, honestly, let's say right after Christmas I got sick, and then not long after that things started to change. So when I got sick, I lost my voice. I couldn't vlog because when I would talk, you couldn't understand me, and I literally lost my voice for like 3 weeks. So for those 3 weeks, I couldn't really talk. So at the time, I'm like, I'm not gonna vlog. It's not really worth it. If anything, you're not gonna be able to understand me because I couldn't actually talk. When I would go to work and have to work, I had a hard time talking to people on the phone or talking to people who came in because they could barely understand me. I don't know what it was that I caught. Eventually, whatever it was turned into a sinus infection, and finally after like a month and a half of dealing with everything, I got on an antibiotic and I started feeling better. But at the time I noticed something that I had noticed with my previous pregnancy with Harrison. I was more attuned to it because I remember I had the same pain, and it was a pain. So essentially I started to get the pain on the right hand side of my body underneath. I started to get this pain on my right side, on the right hand side of my body, essentially where your liver is. And I remember this because with Harrison I had this exact same pain, but with him it was like essentially like the last month and a half when I started to feel this pain. With Levi, it started about mid-January, which was probably around like 25, 26 weeks when I was pregnant. So the 25th, 26th week of my pregnancy, I started to get this pain, and I'm like, okay, I've had this before. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna bring it up to my OB at my next appointment, and then we'll go from there. So I dealt with it for a while. It was kind of random because it wasn't all the time. It would just randomly come on. It would stay for a couple hours and then it would go away. Sometimes I'd wake up with it, sometimes I wouldn't, sometimes I'd go to bed with it, sometimes I wouldn't. It was just really, really random. And so I go to my doctor's appointment, and at that time it was my 29-week gestational diabetes test, so I had to do that fun test, which sucked. You know, it's like not horrible, but the drink that you have to drink isn't the greatest. It's just kind of like a flat, sugary drink that to me it just gives me a headache, and I just kind of feel blah the rest of the day. And so I had that appointment that day, and they always draw blood work because of course you're doing the gestational diabetes test, so they have to draw blood work for your blood. And then they also, my doctor's office does a complete blood count run of the blood that they take. So I also had that done as well. So my results came back from the gestational diabetes, and I'm like, yay, I don't have that, because at my anatomy scan, Levi was measuring big for his gestational age. He was like at 92%, and the maternal fetal medicine doctor said that I need to watch out because a bigger baby at this time frame usually means that gestational diabetes is probably going to come up. So I needed to watch my blood sugar. Big babies equals gestational diabetes. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out about that for the longest time, thinking, crap, I'm gonna have gestational diabetes. I don't want this. I don't want to have to watch what I eat. And go figure. So anyways, at my appointment, I bring up the pain under my rib, and my doctor's like, well, that could be your gallbladder. Because at the time it was just so random, the pain was, I couldn't like pinpoint what was causing it. I didn't know if it was like all the time. I didn't know if it was food related. And so I just kind of went on the thought of maybe it is my gallbladder, and let's try to figure out what's going on, because this pain sucks and it hurts and I don't know what to do about it. So I start looking into gallbladder stuff, like gallbladder issues during pregnancy and gallbladder diet and dealing with gallbladder attacks and all sorts of things. Because I'm like, if I'm having a gallbladder attack, then this is an everyday occurrence, and no matter what I eat, the pain's always there. So I must have an inflamed gallbladder or something like that. So after a couple weeks of trying to figure out what foods were hurting me, because that's what I did. I started to take foods out of my diet that were hurting me. And at that point in time, I started to get nauseous again. Certain foods were just not making me feel good. So I was trying to get rid of them to avoid the pain. I was trying to get rid of them to avoid the nausea. And sometimes I threw up, and so it was just hard to deal with. So trying to cut out all that food, I decided, you know what, I already have seen a gastroenterologist for some other issues. I'm gonna go see him again. So I made an appointment, and I was able to get in with like 2 or 3 weeks, and that wasn't too bad. So I got in, told him what was going on, and he's like, okay, we can run this test, and we can run this test, and we can give you this medication, and we'll see what's going on. So I eventually had a ultrasound on my gallbladder. So I have the ultrasound done on my gallbladder. It literally took like 5 minutes. It was really quick. And then within like a couple days, the results came back and everything was normal. No gallstones in my gallbladder, no signs of inflammation. My liver was fine, all of that. So with the results of my gallbladder ultrasound, I was at a loss. I didn't know what to do. So naturally, I went to Google. Because I'm like, oh my God, what could this pain be? So I Googled right upper quadrant pain. And of course, the first thing that came up was preeclampsia. And I looked at that, I'm like, no, that's not it, because all I have is just this pain, and you know, nothing came of it. But then I decided to go look at my blood work results from when I had my blood draw at my 29-week gestational diabetes test. And I saw that I had low platelets. So when I Google low platelets in pregnancy, it comes up with two things: thrombocytopenia, which is low platelets, which also includes like gestational thrombocytopenia, but also preeclampsia. It comes up with that as well. So at that time, I'm like, no, I can't have preeclampsia. This is, you know, I'm just being a hypochondriac. I'm perfectly fine. Nothing's gonna come of it, and all that. So at my next OB appointment for my pregnancy, I spoke with my OBGYN, and she said, we can run your blood work again around 36 weeks and see if your platelet levels drop, and then we'll go from there. Other than that, she's like, you're completely fine, you're completely healthy, your blood pressure is normal, you still have that pain, but just keep an eye on it. If it is gallbladder stuff, they usually can't do anything until after the baby comes anyways, so you'll just have to bring it up with your gastroenterologist then if the pain does not go away. So life went on, and the early spring was horrible when it came to the weather. It was constantly snowing, so life went on, being stuck inside with constant snowstorms, and we just dealt with things, and I just went along with my pregnancy. And then eventually I hit that time frame where all of my OB appointments went from monthly to every 2 weeks, and I started seeing my doctor more, and so I was just updating her with how I was feeling. Still had that pain, nothing else was coming up, and then eventually I hit that it was about 34 weeks. I was at that 34-week mark when they decided when she actually ran my blood work again. And lo and behold, my platelet levels were dropping. And so it was at that point in time that they're like, okay, your platelet levels are dropping, you still have this pain, you don't have high blood pressure, and no protein in your urine, but we're going to do non-stress tests to check and see how baby's doing. Keep an eye on you, because these are symptoms of preeclampsia. So of course I'm like, great. I was trying not to be a hypochondriac, but maybe my doctor is right. Maybe this is what it was. And so I would have non-stress tests. Some of them just weren't the greatest. Some of them took a long time, because during the tests, he would have a lot of decelerative moments. And when that would happen, they would have to keep monitoring me for longer just to see if he was having more. So there was one stress test that I had where I was literally there for like 2 hours. I had like a good amount of time, and then his heart rate would dip, and then they'd say, okay, we need to get this to the doctor. We're gonna keep you back on for another 20 minutes to a half hour. And then he would have another dip, and then they'd come back and say, okay, we need to keep you on for another 20 minutes to a half hour. And it was just back and forth, back and forth. And then finally there was this point in time where he had this good chunk where he wasn't dipping in his heart rate. And so they're like, okay, you're good to go. You can go home. So those were pretty fun. So things started to change a week before Easter. I was almost at 35 weeks. I was like 34 weeks and like 4 days. I started to get a headache. I went into my doctor's appointment that day and my blood pressure was high. And so that started to put things into perspective for me. My doctor's office did another blood draw on me, and my platelet levels kept dropping. They also did a protein, like a more in-depth protein draw on me, and I wasn't fully my body had just started to release protein into my urine at that point. So it wasn't really big. It was pretty minimal. And so that doctor's appointment, I was actually seeing the midwife. My OB was on vacation that day, and so I would see my OB the next week because she was going to be delivering the baby if I were to go as planned. If I had to go into labor and delivery on my own, then it would have just been whoever would have done the surgery, whoever was on call. But the midwife, she was unable to do the delivery because I was going to do my C-section, since I had a C-section with Harrison. And so she was the one who did all the blood work, and I had another NST. So I waited until the next week, which was the day after Easter, that I would see my OB again. At that point in time, by the time I went to that appointment, my blood pressure was high again. And so my OB said, your blood pressure is higher, it's getting higher. You have what's considered gestational hypertension because your blood pressure is high, but it's not high enough to be considered like severe preeclampsia. So she said and this was on a Monday, she said on Friday, we're gonna deliver your baby. So I literally had 4 days to figure out, to come to terms, to anything, to realize that I'm gonna have a baby in 4 days. Because I was planning on having him at my 30-week appointment, which was gonna be in 2 weeks from then. And so I'd already told work, my surgery had been scheduled for a couple months by then, and so that's what I thought was going to happen. And I come to that appointment at my 36-week and 4-day appointment, and my doctor said at 37 weeks you're gonna have your baby. So that was interesting, to say the least. I didn't vlog much that week because I was just trying to figure out everything. I had to work still, and so I didn't really get a chance to just kind of sit down and vlog. And so then the day of April 14th came, and it was time to take, it was just time.